Welcome everybody. So today we are going to talk about while loops in JavaScript. And a good way to understand a JavaScript program is a series of instructions that the computer or the web browser executes from top to bottom in order. However, there are things we can do to change the way the program executes. Those are generally called control flow. And so one of the things we can do is to cause parts of code to execute multiple times. So there may be a situation where you want to do the same thing a bunch of times, or you want to do the same operation on a bunch of data, or you've generally got the same type of thing you're doing and you need to do it a number of times. And obviously, or you may not know how many times you want to do it. It may be situationally dependent. And so you've got to figure out a way to do that. And generally that's called control flow. There's a bunch of different types of it. There's while loops, there's for loops. There's if-then statements, and today we're going to talk about while loops, which are one of the most simple. So let's say I wanted to prompt the user to give me a number. So let's say let user number equal prompt, and then let's say I want a number greater than 100. And so we want to force the user or ask the user to keep on entering a number until they actually give us one that is greater than 100. So the way we do one of the ways we can do this is with a while loop. So a while loop in JavaScript looks like this. We say while, and then in parentheses we put the condition. So the condition is the condition under which the loop will execute. So if we want to keep reprompting them unless they give us a number greater than 100, we want to re-execute the prompt while user number is less than or equal to 100. So that's our condition for execution. And then we open up a curly brace, and you notice it gave me, so when I opened up that curly brace, Visual Studio Code actually gave me another curly brace to end it. And I just hit enter because the convention is to put all of the stuff in a while loop or a block of code. Anything between curly braces like that is called a block of code. On its own lines, and you'll notice it indents it, so that's the convention too, is to indent it. So, we said we wanted to re-prompt the user to give us a number greater than 100 until they actually do it. So I'm just going to copy this prompt, and I'm going to put it down here. And so what this code is going to do is it is going to define user number, and I actually have to get rid of this let, because we use let when we're defining a variable, but not when we're just saving a new value to it. So let user number equals prompt means prompt the user to give us a number greater than 100, store that value in a new variable. That's what let means, a new variable called user number. And then as long as user number is less than or equal to 100, we need to reprompt them because they haven't, less than or equal to 100 is the opposite of greater than 100, if that makes sense. So let's see how this works. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to save all. I didn't change anything else, but it's a good habit to get into to save all. I'm going to go to Chrome, and I'm going to open my index.html. So it's going to ask me for a number greater than 100, and I'm going to say 99. It's going to ask me for a number greater than 100. I'm going to say 98. It's going to ask me for a number greater than 100. I'm going to say 100. And I bet you can guess what's going to happen next. It's going to ask me again because that's still not greater than 100. I put in 101, and it stops asking me, finally. And if I go to the developer console, I can see that I'm actually not printing anything out to the console. It's just prompting me again and again and again until I finish. So let's go ahead, and when the user finally gives us the right number, let's print that out to the console. So we want to do console.log, and I'm going to use string interpolation, so I'm going to start with backticks. Your number was, and $, curly brace, user number. So I'm going to save. I'm going to go back to Chrome. Oh, I didn't save all, but I can't save all because I only edited one file. I'm going to reload it. I'm going to try it a couple of times, get it wrong. -1 is less than 100. -100 is less than 100. 100 is equal to 100. 101, finally. And it says your number was 101. And you'll notice I didn't put a period at the end of it. It's a sentence I probably should have. So I'm going to go do that now. But I'm not going to reload it because it's just going to change it a little tiny bit. So one of the other common things that we want to do with while loops is track how many times we have been inside of it. Track how many loops we have gone through to get out of the while loop. So I'm going to say, I'm going to let times looped equals 0. And then every time I go through the loop, and I'm going to do this at the beginning of the loop because I want to make sure that I get it right away, I am going to say times looped equals times looped plus 1. So that's called incrementing a variable. It's a really, really common thing you do. And this actually works. You notice I'm using the same variable twice in one line. What it does is it evaluates the right part of the equal sign first, and it says, okay, times looped plus 1, that's an expression, that's something you have to evaluate, is equal to, in this case, in the first case, it's 1, and then it stores it back in times looped. This is also, by the way, an expression. This user number is greater than or equal to 100. It's just an expression that evaluates to a true or false value. It doesn't evaluate to a numerical value like this one. And I want to print that out to the console as well. Again, I'm going to use string interpolation because I think it's a little bit easier. Oh, I got to use backticks. I forgot to do that. Times looped, $. There we go. And we want to say how many tries it took the user to get it right. So I'm going to save all. I'm going to go back to Chrome. I'm going to reload. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not going to do all of them. 5, 6, and then 101. And it said your number was 101. It took you 7 tries to get it right. So is this number correct? Did it actually take me 7 tries to get it right? Let's add a little bit more information in here to see if we can figure that out. So let's log all of the little intermediate numbers to the console. And let's do this every time we prompt the user. Let's log the number they guessed to the console. So we prompt them up here. And we're going to use string interpolation. It's not really guessing, they're just entering. I mean, maybe if they don't know what greater than 100 is, it's guessing, but that's not going to be the case for any of us. So it's user number. And I'm just going to copy this line of code and put it down here. And I have to do it after the prompt. If I do it before the prompt, it's not going to work correctly. It's going to double this first one, right? If I put this line up here, it's not going to re-prompt the user before it logs it again. So I'll stop and say here that the stuff we've covered up until now has been pretty straightforward. When you get into control flow is when you get into the part of programming where you really have to think about what you are doing, and you really have to think about what order you are doing things in. So let's go ahead and run this. We got a longer program than we have before. So let me just walk through this and then we'll run it. So, and by walk through it, I'm going to tell you what each line does. We're creating a new variable called user number, and we're prompting the user to give a number greater than 100. And whatever they put in that prompt gets stored in the number. We're logging what the value of the number is. We're initializing a new variable called times loop to 0. And we're starting a while loop where it's going to run while the user number is less than or equal to 100. So while it runs, we're incrementing the looped variable. We're prompting the user for another number, and we're logging the number. And it's going to do this until the user gives us a number that is greater than 100. Now, that's never going to stop. If the user keeps on putting in 1, they will never get out of this loop. Conversely, if the user puts in 101 up here, we'll never enter the loop. It'll never go in there. And then at the end, it's going to say what the number was, and it's going to say how many times it took them to get it right. So I'm going to save all, and we are going to take a look at this in action. Go to Google Chrome. We are going to reload. And let's say I do it right the first time. Actually, let me put in a couple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see it logging as I'm doing this. I'm going to put in a 101. Okay, it said it took you 6 tries to get it right. That's what we're actually checking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It actually took me 7 tries to get it right. What's the reason for this discrepancy? And think about this for a second as I'm slowly moving my mouse to the Visual Studio Code window. Why isn't it counting it correctly? And the answer is we are not counting it correctly. So we are asking them what the number is, and then we're setting times loop to 0. And this is technically correct. It is technically tracking the number of times we're in this loop. but the number of times they have tried to get it right is not equal to the number of times that we're in this loop, because we're doing it one time out here. So we have two different ways of solving this. We can just start at 1. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not technically tracking the times we've looped now, but that's okay. That's not what we're using it for. Or we can just initialize user number to some default value. Let's call it 0, because we know 0 is gonna cause us to go into the loop. And then it is only going to prompt the user inside of the loop. So if we do it this way, the times looped is both an accurate count of the number of times we've looped and an accurate count of the number of times the user has put in a number, because we're only prompting them for a number inside of the loop. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to do the exact same input. So I did 1 through 6, and then I did 101. We're going to try this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 101. And now it says 7 tries, because this first prompt is now inside of the loop rather than outside of it. So we'll just verify this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we print the number again, because that's how we wrote the code. And then it says it took 7 tries. It took you 7 tries to get it right. So this is working now. It's always been working as it's written, but we had an error in logic before that was causing us to report the wrong number of loops. So this is a little bit better of a program. One other thing I'll show you is if I run this and I put in 101, it's going to exit. It's going to run the whole loop one time because we don't have a value in there, but it's going to exit immediately. If I initialize user number to a value that is greater than 100, so let's say 101, I'm going to save all, and I reload this, it's never going to prompt the user for anything, because it's never going to go into the while loop, because this condition, user number is less than or equal to 100, is never met. So, and 0 is a default value. The user is going to have to put something in. So it sort of doesn't matter what we put here as long as it's less than 100. Okay, so that's a lot of material, and this one is a fairly complicated. This is where we're getting into the really interesting stuff. So I'm sort of going to recap. A while loop is a way of running the same set of code while a certain condition obtains, while a certain condition is true. We want a number greater than 100. We want to reprompt the user for a number greater than 100. So our condition is while that number is not greater than 100, which means less than or equal to 100. You can use comparison operators here, by the way. You can use equals. Double equals is actually, maybe it's triple equals in JavaScript. Triple equals and double equals both test for a certain sort of equality. Double equals is to see if two things are equal. So let's set it to 0. Here, I'll show you how this works. Give me a number other than 0 is what we'll put here. So now it's only going to run while it's equal to 0, which is what it's initialized to right out the gate. We're going to save all. We're going to reload this. And I'm going to do 1, which it will take, because that is not 0. Let's try it again. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2. So anytime I put a number, and it collapses all these 5 up because it says the same thing. And that's just to show you what the equality operator looks like, but what we originally wrote was we wanted a number less than or equal to 100. So a while loop looks for a condition. It runs the loop inside while that condition is true. And obviously you have to have something happen in the loop or something happening outside of your code that can make that condition not true. So this is a while loop, and this is one of the really important sort of fundamental control flow structures. So what I would like you to do for your skills check for this video is give me some code that uses a while loop to print all of the even variables between 1 and 20 inclusive. Sorry, all of the even numbers. Let me say that again. Give me a while loop that prints all of the even numbers from 1 through 20 inclusive. It's got to be in a while loop. You can't just say console.log2, console.log4, console.log6. It has to be in a while loop. And if you've got any questions, if there's anything you don't understand, as always, feel free to raise your hand and we will take a look at it together.